Okay, we are live.
Fantastic. Good morning from South Africa, good evening in Malaysia, and good hello wherever else you are. I'm Kathy, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some sense of my understanding of impact and sustainability, and mine turns the world on its head. So, starting out, if I could only move my escape. I am so sorry because I shared my screen and now I'm unable to do anything. My whole computer has frozen and so I can't even stop share. This is too quaint. Nothing is happening for me here. It's all frozen. Ah, there we go. I got it. Okay, it's a hard mix. Right, so let me go. I am so sorry. I've got it. Yes, I got it. And a very ambitious topics, 8 super hacks to change the world for good. I'm very embarrassed that I did this one because when I thought about it, I thought, who am I to have any idea or what about what a super hack is when I didn't use the word super hack, but I thought I'd tone it down a bit to change the world, right? And so what I thought is I'm actually turning sustainability and impact on their heads, because what we know about impact is this, how to measure it. And what we know about sustainability are the Sustainable Development Goals. And what I decided was I need to step back a bit and see how I and the people around me, and it's mainly the people around me in Africa, in South Africa, in bits of South Africa, have tackled, I knew this would happen. My dog's been asleep for hours. Talk amongst yourselves while I pick him up. No. Right, I'm back. And I so apologize. And this is quite the most disorganized presentation you've had yet, Andrea, but we can only get better from here.
It's always more interesting and diverse, so I love it already.
Okay, so this is the cause of all the problems. And he traveled with me to Cape Town yesterday and he got quite ill. And I lost him at the airport. They couldn't find him. Right, moving right along. So the issue is, how do you deal with things like this? This is South Africa, not the South Africa I live in, but the South Africa literally on my doorstep, okay? And if you're going to be looking at what are the Sustainable Development Goals, you're seeing that living in these informal settlements, you're not exactly achieving your Sustainable Development Goals very well. Okay, and these are major fails. Not that South Africa is the only major fail in the world by any means, but this is the world failing the rest of the world. This was kind of strange and kind of quaint. You can choose circumcision and just arrive for a circumcision, and it's sponsored by PEPFAR in America. It probably leads to good health and well-being, allegedly. This is restaurants, okay. Not like we see on CNN, and trade. So again, decent work, economic growth, reduced inequalities, responsible consumption and production, infrastructure. And then there are havens of amazingness, okay, that work on the zero hunger, no poverty, some of the sustainable goals. So I'm going to start off with a case study of this amazing woman that I only discovered 2 years ago in the work I was doing, and I've fallen in love with and doing a whole lot of work with her. And there's so many more. Her name's Tsitsi Makabela, and she started in that same informal settlement by just feeding people once a week. She then built a container to put the little people in the creche. And then it grew and grew. And when we joined, she needed us to help her paint the school. The school now goes to grade 4, which is to 10 through 13-year-olds. And by next year, it will go through to 15-year-olds. And all one woman's work. So here we have the issue of quality education, decent work, gender equality, peace, justice, strong institutions, etc. A typical example of how to get it right. Okay, so it's not me being arrogant, it's me looking at someone else and saying, I think she got it. And just too wonderful. These kids who can't afford clothing all arrive at school, get fed 2 meals a day, get these incredible, wonderful big swap shop, and they get this wonderful clothing, and they're just too beautiful. And my young mentee, Bilal, who is an artist, self-taught, and we were painting the mural, and she said, do you want to come and teach art? He said, sure. But he'd also taught himself to code. And so we started a computer class. We don't have Wi-Fi too often, and we very rarely have electricity because of the blackouts here. But when we do, it's pretty cool. So this is the computer class. So this is how it started with Bilal taking a Mandela image, which is what one must do, and taking the best Mandela quote in the world, which is education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And he started on the serious murals, and I started on the more childlike murals. But this is the ablution block. Prior to this, bear in mind, no water in the settlement, but we managed to get, not me, she's got the plumbing sorted out. And so that's the ablution block. This is one of the teaching blocks. And as you can see, the difference between Bilal's skills and mine are quite sizable. And just once more to remind you of the quote we all love, and that these kids are well looked after. So sustainability and impact on their heads. So what I did was, because now I'd promised you 8 super hacks, and I was going to solve the world's problems for you. I decided I'll go with the impact. I take 4 I's, and sustainability, I take 4 S's. And we talk a little bit of theory, but I want you guys to interrupt me as often as possible. I can't see the chat, so Andrea, please just break in when you can, okay?
Yes, we'll do.
Wonderful, thank you. So, impact. This is how the kids in that space, we've just seen the beautiful school, this is the water that they normally have access to in these JoJo tanks. The JoJo tanks are throughout South Africa. They collect rainwater, and you get some form of water. It's not necessarily clean, but it's rainwater. By the way, this particular informal settlement is built on what was previously a rubbish dump. Okay, so, but it's been hollowed out, and it's become permanent. And there's a whole issue around urban planning and how one allows for permanent structures and start giving title deed, which is a big theory that's come out of the developing world. But just to take myself on a little side trip, we are organizing an art exhibition at a very prestigious sculpture garden next year. And one of our and our topic is about gender-based violence. The photographs are based on women people who were traumatized through gender-based violence. And we want a sustainable project to follow on. And to me, the most logical one, initially we were going to build trauma rooms and make them beautiful, but to me, the most logical one is the water issue. So we've decided we're going to find a way to beautify the JoJo tanks. So if anybody's got any great ideas, that's what we want to do, because JoJo tanks are everywhere. The kids climb on these structures. They may as well be cool structures that the kids can play on and get water from. So impact and sustainability in one. Don't know if we're going to get it right, but we're working on it from January. So the first I for impact I thought we would look at is initiate. Who are you trying to help? What are you trying to do? And I suppose why I wanted to start with this is because somebody who's worked in impact and innovation in Africa, but South Africa, for many years, for many years, but in different guises. Probably one of my biggest beefs, and when I was a journalist, it was my biggest beef. My biggest beef is people arriving in a country when I was a journalist and telling our story. In those days, there wasn't social media. So in those days, and so the point was that our story was being told by people who needed to tell it for their audiences, but by goodness, they told the wrong story. They kind of told the same story I've just told you, with all those awful images of poverty and violence on top. Meanwhile, they were living in beautiful homes and swimming and, riding fast cars and flying in and consuming carbon credits. And am I sounding cynical? Right. So when we talk about initiating contact, I think those of us who are in impact, and I'm sure those of you who with us on the call know all about people like organizations like IDEO, who provide us with great frameworks on how to approach a community, how to make it an interactive experience, how to make sure that, using old style anthropology, that you are finding ways to initiate relationships that are meaningful and that reflect the experience of the people that you're meeting with. But if you're going to have impact, are you sure that you are helping the right people? How do you know? Where are they? How do you reach them? How do you know that they really want your help? And I know that I'm talking to an audience that comes from places where there are massive divides socially. And so I'm preaching in inverted commas to the converted in inverted commas. But do we ever know what the people we go to do good with need? Or is it what's in it for them and what's in it for us? What are we trying to achieve by going in there and changing the world and changing communities? Why are we doing this? And I think these questions have to be asked over and over again, because again, I arrived knowing Tsitsi. I met her to do a broadcast with a year ago. She phoned me and she said she needed help. I arrived, I said, we'll help paint. But that was a key contact because she's been in the community for 8 to 10 years. She's an immigrant, but she's been in that community and she's made a difference. So no matter how much goodwill I might have had and thought that people needed work clothes, because we've got an organization that does good by providing people with work clothes, the work that most of the people in the settlement are doing is trade between themselves. They don't necessarily need office clothes. On the other hand, when I was working on wellness for some big investment banks, the country representatives who were the head of the country would arrive in the country and they would get very angry when the receptionist arrived at 8:05. They didn't know that she was arriving from a similar space where there was no water and had to look magnificent. So we need to understand our market in good old consumption terms. So we need to interact. So is it a question that we impose, we observe, we cooperate, we're getting better here, we include, how do we include, we co-develop, and the last word I can't see because I've managed to put my images on top of it. So you guys can read the last word if you can see it. But that should have been the good word. So that was about how we move into a community and what are we doing that's going to be impactful and sustainable. And because I'm an innovator, obviously innovation approaches might be the best way, probably are the best way, but they've got to be generated out of the community with the community. So if we look at the example of Tsitsi, she recognized a need, an opportunity, a challenge, and she turned it into something awesome. And she went along the route of understanding the environment. Did she do research? Probably not. Did she frame the issue? She moved from ideation, really. She prototyped with a container and she kept on building and she's kept on building and she's kept on iterating. Her prototype worked. The fact that funding is a big issue means this prototype doesn't work as well as we'd like it to, and it talks to the massive divisions in all our societies. So this is the school the day we had Women's Day celebration, and we had some of my favorite creatives who work with me in the inner city come out to this part of town and blow up balloons and do cool stuff with the kids on Women's Day to celebrate women. So did we achieve impact? Well, those of you who are in this game know that there are these fantastic ways to measure impact, like theory of change, where you look at all, you draft it out and then you send your reports and you get your money and you save half for your organization and put a quarter into the organization on the ground. I'm being cynical. It doesn't always work like that, obviously. But I think that it's really important all the way along the impact route to say, what do you intend? What is your impact? Is it good? Is it bad? And what are the unintended consequences? It's great to donate shoes to kids, but if they actually don't have clothes as well, they're walking around without clothes but with shoes. And if they don't have food in their bellies, it's great to say we're going to give them Wi-Fi. Or how do you chop it up into bits? Are you perpetuating a problem, or are you enriching people? Are you ameliorating or exacerbating a problem? Okay. And what are the unintended consequences? And that's the tragedy around so much goodwill. And whose measures are you observing? And at what point are those of us who are intermediaries in this game so busy filling in reports for our fantastic funders that we actually aren't really feeling the qualitative differences that we're seeing in the societies? What does success look like to them and to us? It's probably not a big fat pig with lots of gold bars, or maybe it is. Okay. So that takes us through the 4 impact hacks. So let's move on to sustainability hacks, and I'm happy to take questions. I see their chat comments, so I'm happy to take questions now, or we can go through rapid fire through the theory and let's get into real chat, which was probably better. So my 5 sustainability, the sustain hacks. I love this image because if you look at it very closely, it's a multi-stakeholder, I don't know, it's a little shopping mall all on its own, because you can get your shoes repaired, you can get your tires serviced. It's also Elam's gold exchange, and you can also buy fruit, which is just, I love it. And sadly, Elam's probably moved on, but there we go. So if we're really talking sustainability, we've got to get down to the brass tacks of strategy. And those of us who've worked in the innovation game, in the social enterprise game, all know about business model canvases, and happy to go into any of this with anybody. So it's really cool when you're working with social entrepreneurs, and by social entrepreneurs, we mean people who are involved in society to do good, but to make profits. So it's not the old-fashioned charity, right? So social enterprise business model canvas, obviously you've got to look at all your key resources, your value propositions. What are you wanting? What is your impact? Who's your customer, or who's your consumer, or who's your community? And then what is your revenue stream, but what is the value you're creating? So this for me is not my favorite social enterprise business model, because ultimately it's about value creation for all, and not just the old-fashioned business canvas. A modified one that I sometimes use is to look at systemically at what the inputs are, the business focuses are, etc. And obviously right now we're putting in business plans for funding with Tsitsi, so we're following this kind of model. So I'm talking systems here, and you might recognize this particular artwork. It's by a British artist whose name's just escaped me when I tried to be clever. And systemically, I've used this before in my innovation talk, but systemically, when we're working with social entrepreneurs, we go through all of these, whether you do it in a circle or whether you do it in a kind of Excel spreadsheet. You work out and you assess your operations and how well or badly you're doing, and get help and do all sorts of, that's where the mentor kind of game comes in, and that's where I like to play. So in essence, I've now spoken fully about sustainability, and that's kind of it for now. I'm going to stop sharing if I can get to stop share, because this is not allowing me to. Right, there we go.
So because we are seeing the numbers going up and people are visiting, so we have quite a number of people in the room, then let's just stop the live stream. If you could tell the YouTube viewers where they can connect with you, that would be nice. And then I will stop the live stream and we can start a real conversation in the room.
Fantastic. Yes. Yay. Okay. I'm at impactforgood.co.za, which is for South Africa. Impactforgood.co.za, and it's behind me right now. If I duck my head low and work out my mirroring, that's what it is. Impact for Good. And I'd love to work with everybody. We do lots of cool stuff. We do a lot of creative work. When I was working with British Council, we had a fantastic social entrepreneurs program. Then it ended, and I had all these amazing social creatives, didn't know what to do with them. So we opened a museum store, and we still have the museum store going because they needed a route to market. So I'm only too happy to work with people and get our hands dirty and your hands dirty. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this.
So let's stop the live stream. Thank you very much for those who were watching on YouTube, and for the question, which is coming from Ashwin Rush Queena. Yes, Nishit is coming 8 p.m. Malaysia time tonight to share about the monks and the base jumpers. What is the common thing between them? So we will meet him